November of 2024, I pulled my 1991 automatic Honda NSX into the shop to go ahead and tear it down and build my ultimate dream version of the NSX. This has been one of the biggest projects I've ever tackled. We had to replace the frame rail, replace the entire uniside. I decided to go with a K-Series engine, so we fitted it with a K24 with a 5-speed manual transmission. And then to make it even cooler, I sent this car off to Straight Fabrication for them to design and build an entire twin turbo setup for the car. Over here, we have a ton of stuff ready to go back on the car. Here is the power plant, so the engine, the transmission. Here is the turbo kit that they built. Here's the rear cradle. All the stuff is fully restored and ready to go back in the car. Now, of course, before we install anything back onto the chassis of the NSX, we need to paint the shell. And that, my friends, is exactly what we are doing today. We are going to be painting the NSX. You guys picked out the color, which I'm pretty excited for. I'm happy to paint it because it should be an easy paint job. Now, we do have a lot, and I mean a lot of work to get done before we bring this car to the booth. Starting with, this is the factory sound deadening, and all of that needs to be removed. That side over there got pretty damaged when we replaced the frame rail. I went ahead and picked up 15 pounds of dry ice. The word on the street is, if you toss on some dry ice onto the factory sound deadening, it flakes off much easier. Let's give it a shot. If I had to do this again, I would probably get around 30 pounds of dry ice. It is a little bit on the expensive side, but 15 pounds was hardly enough to get done what we needed to get done. All you do is toss it onto the sound deadening. It'll freeze the sound deadening and it'll start cracking off of the body. I then grabbed a scraper tool and just chipped it off until we had nothing left. All of the factory sound deadening is now completely removed. I am gonna need to go through and do a little bit of seam sealing on the front and the very back, but we can save that for later after we re-sandblast the entire car. You may be wondering what I just said, re-sandblast the entire car. At least I think that is what I'm about to do. We have two problems with this bare aluminum shell as it sits. Problem number one is oxidation. It's bare aluminum. The entire shell was sandblasted a few months ago, and I didn't know this at the time, but bare aluminum oxidizes very quickly within a few hours. What I've recently discovered and been told is after you have aluminum blasted or down to bare aluminum with nothing on it, you need to have it sealed within 24 hours. When I had the car blasted, I didn't know that. So that's problem number one. Problem number two, when the sandblast shop blasted this thing, they used a very, very, very rough media. Now, it doesn't matter on a lot of stuff underneath the car. I don't really care if it's rough. It's going to be undercoated anyway. But when we're talking things like the engine bay, where it needs to be nice, the whole trunk setup, that also needs to be beautiful. Of course, all the door jambs and all that good stuff. I want it to be as nice as possible. I think we can fix both of these issues at once by reblasting the whole entire car, not with the rough sand that the sandblast shop used, but with something called crushed glass. I'm gonna go ahead and do a quick test piece to see if my theory is correct. This whole piece was blasted by the shop, and then up here, you can see it's shinier. I went over their blasted surface with glass media. I'm gonna go ahead and just rattle can this piece. Obviously, that's not gonna simulate how it's gonna look out of the booth after we epoxy it and seal it and all that good stuff and then paint it. But I just wanna get a rough idea of how it would look if we painted directly over the glass beaded surface versus the 40 grit surface. Let's rattle can this part. You can very, very, very clearly see the difference. See how rough that side looks? That is still a little bit rough, but it is so much better than that side. And keep in mind, this is rattle canned. There's no sealer, there's no epoxy primer, there's nothing else laid down. As soon as we epoxy it base clear, it's gonna look really nice, provided we actually glass media the whole car. Looks like the problem is solved. We just need to spend about an entire day reblasting this entire shell. I'm gonna do it myself this time around. I think I picked the worst days of the summer to do this. You'll see here in a minute, you have to wear a full face hood when you're blasting, otherwise your face will get destroyed. Being in the direct sunlight, being 100 degrees outside, and having that hood on, it was pretty warm, but it had to be done. All right, here is the idea. We have the NSX on the rotisserie, on a blue tarp. We have a pot blaster that I borrowed from my brother Austin, full of the glass media that I used on that sample part. The plan is to blast the shell until this is empty, sweep it up off the tarp, recycle it back through the blaster, and keep her moving until this entire thing is done. Of course, not blasting the roof. Should be pretty easy to do, just time consuming. Man, I wish I would have just blasted this thing with glass media myself from the very beginning. It would have saved a huge headache with the roof, and now another headache with having to reblast it. And of course, knowing what I know now, it would have never been blasted until we were ready for paint. I'm 5 hours deep and I'm like 20% done, but I feel like this is going a lot faster than it would to hand sand the whole thing. The difference is absolutely insane. If you take a look down here, for example, you see how shiny that is? That is blasted with the glass media, and that is from the blasting shop. So the whole chassis needs to be looking like that, cleaned and very smooth to the touch. You can really see the shine just come back to life. Not only is it pulling off the oxidation, it's also smoothing out the surface. It should look a whole lot better under paint. All right, we are on day number 2 of blasting this thing. So both sides are done, the underside is done, the engine bay is done, so we have everything in the trunk to still go ahead and blast. This rear deck, I guess you'd call it, we gotta blast that. The whole inside, minus the roof, and everything up front. So I guess you could say we are about halfway done. This is definitely taking a lot longer than I had anticipated, but it'll be well worth it. Now I know from experience when we had the EVO 8 blasted that no matter what you do, there's always going to be a little bit of sand left in the chassis, but I'm doing my best to get it all out. The last thing I want is sand to be falling out when we paint. Now before we move on to undercoating the bottom of the car, there's one thing I need to go ahead and repair. So this guy right here broke off on the driver's side. Here I have a few pieces of aluminum, and we are gonna go ahead and rebuild that. It looks like one of the previous owners had riveted something back on, so there was a few holes in the floor that we had to fill. So I got those welded in, ground them down, and it was time to build our little stand mount. Now I said earlier that we were going to paint today. Unfortunately, the paint booth rental got pushed back a day, which is completely fine because I still need to undercoat the car. All right, we're done. Don't judge my welds. I'm not going to show them all that close, but the missing piece is now welded on and we can move forward. We are now going to move on to applying the undercoat. From the factory, they use, I think it's considered sprayable seam sealer. Unfortunately, I don't have any way of replicating that, but what I am gonna do, which is what I did on the yellow Evo, is apply Raptor liner. This is a sprayable bed liner and it works amazing for doing the undercoatings on cars. I want to get this done now because unlike the yellow Evo, I am going to be painting the entire shell all the same color. Now on that car, the whole underside is still black. And while it's nice, I would prefer it all the same color. So we need to spray this out first, let it cure, scuff it, and then paint the whole car. The first thing I need to do is go through and tape off all of the holes in the floor so that Raptor liner doesn't blow into the cabin. Now I need to mask off the rest of the car because I don't want any overspray on anything else.
Quick question, man.
Yeah, what's up?
So, you do everything from top to bottom?
Yes.
Damn.
I do everything, yep.
So, what is this going to be then?
This is an old Honda NSX. So it's actually the same as that, but the older version of that. So that's a new one. That's the 2017. This is the 1991.
That's an Acura, right?
Yep.
Okay. Alright, cool. Take it easy, man.
Here's all. See you later. All right, this thing is fully masked off. I got my epoxy primer here that I'm mixing up. So we're gonna spray epoxy first, which is a perfect direct metal primer. You could also use sealer. I like epoxy. We're gonna epoxy it, wait about 20 minutes, and then we're gonna go ahead and spray out the Raptor liner. Pretty excited for this, it should look nice. You can see here I am applying everything over the factory undercoating. I was going to rip off all of the undercoating, but after speaking to a few people who know way more about this than I do, they all said if the factory undercoating is still in great shape and not flaking off, there's absolutely no need to remove it. Kind of like paint. If the factory paint is still in great shape, not flaking off, you just sand it down and reapply. Epoxy is all sprayed out. We're gonna let this sit for about 20-25 minutes, and then we spray out the next step. Now they make this very simple. You take a quarter of this, dump it in here, mix it up, and you spray. They say to apply the Raptor liner anywhere between 35 and 60 psi and spray it 18 to 30 inches away. Now both of these greatly affect the texture of the Raptor liner. So just like paint, I like to do a test panel first, make sure I like the texture, and then spray the car. Spraying this outside on the tarp was definitely the move. I've sprayed the Raptor liner in the shop before, and while there's not a lot of overspray, it smells so bad. Look at how nice this thing came out. We do need to let it sit for quite a while, but it turned out freaking phenomenal. It's the next day. Let's go ahead and get this thing unwrapped and see how good of a job that we did. A lot of this, unfortunately, I did have to spray in the dark with a flashlight. It is what it is. I'm betting it turned out perfect. We got her outside, all unmasked. Turned out very, very, very nice. Now keep in mind, this is going to be painted over the undercoating, but here is how she looks. This thing is all finished up. We're almost ready for paint. I do need to let it dry for at least 24 hours, rescuff, and then we can hit the booth.